Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Everything Athletes. I'm your host, Kim Carducci, former Division I swimmer and existential thinker. I am so excited for today's episode because our guest has a very interesting and powerful approach to supporting high performers, and it all relates back to music. Rosie Mead is a music sociologist on a mission to get us using music every day to support our well-being. She runs a nonprofit called Musica Music and Wellbeing. She coaches athletes through the power of music. And she also hosts her own podcast show called Be Your Own DJ. And I will include all of her links on where you can find her in the show notes. So, Rosie, welcome to the show.
Lovely. Thanks for having me, Kim. It's really good to be on here.
Yes, and you cover a topic that is so interesting to me. I am so curious about the work that you do because I myself love music. I'm so moved by music. Anytime you play the theme song to Finding Nemo, I cry.
Oh,
So I totally get the power of music and emotions, but please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the work you do with music.
yeah. I mean, there's so much to tell you. It's kind of, where do I begin? So I've been working, and this might sound really strange. So I've been working in the field of dementia care for the last 11 years. My background is in music psychology and music sociology, and looking at how music can support people with dementia to sort of kind of improve communication, to support emotion, to support connections. And it was really kind of the first lockdown this time last year that I realized everything I've been learning about, it's applicable to all of us. You know, we all to some degree kind of need that form of connection to support our, emotional aspects, to support how we want to feel. And I just started looking into, well, actually, how can I apply this in a wider context? And then I can't remember why exactly I came onto the sports arena. So my husband's a triathlete, so that's kind of always been there. And I think I just thought, well, actually, how can music help us kind of to support our emotional sides, to then be our best self? And then looking at, well, actually, where can this be applied? And the sports world seemed like a great fit. And the more that I researched and looked into this, I realized actually there's really something there. And like you're saying, so many of us, we know how music can make us feel, but we often maybe don't know exactly what's happening when we're listening to music, or the specific benefits, or how we can apply it. So that's where I've kind of really started to focus. So it might seem like a very kind of round the houses way to where I'm kind of currently am. But there is a direct link between, the research I've been doing in healthcare and kind of music, health and well-being. And then actually looking at, why can't we just take that knowledge and then put it into how we can feel our best to then perform at our best? And that's where the sports area comes in.
Yes, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's directly applicable. If you think of, and I probably reference Michael Phelps in every one of my episodes because I'm just a huge fan of his. But before his races, he was always known to have the big headphones over his swim cap to be motivated to go into the race and hype him up. I think he was listening to rap and Lil Wayne, but it's so interesting how there are different ways that music and sports can motivate, can help you emote, can help you process. So I guess, what have you seen so far in the sports world with athletes and using music to, I guess, just tap into those emotions?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is so a lot of the stuff I've been looking at is around that emotional side of, and we might have spoken about this on Instagram before. I've read so many books where it's like, forget about your emotions. If you show your emotions, you lose.
That's
And
sports.
then, yeah, and it's so dry. I was really surprised, I must admit, because I'm coming from that kind of emotional intelligence side. And that's where music can help us to explore our emotions. You can change the way that you want to feel. And that's why my podcast is called Be Your Own DJ, because you can't change what's happening to you, but you can change the way that you perceive it. And you can, to a certain extent, change the way that you feel through the music you listen to. So in the sports world, that's where it can really work. Whatever what your goal is, whether, say, it's like pre-competition, and you've got nerves there, you might feel that you're actually running at such a high energy that you then want to use music to just calm that down a bit. You don't then want to pop on something else that's going to make that go out of control. But that's so subjective. Someone else might feel that actually they need something to really pump them up to get them going. And I think that's from what I've been reading, from talking with people as well. That's kind of the power of music. There's so much that obviously we'll talk about. But in terms of, the emotional side and actually getting you ready for that race or that training that you're about to do, that's where it can then start tapping into your emotions and help you kind of explore that a bit. You can use music to explore how you're feeling, how you want to feel. It's really powerful in that regard.
So that's really interesting. Can you explain a little more how you can use music to change the way you feel?
So this is something that I'm really keen to look at, and it's something I use a lot myself. So I use desire mapping. I don't know if you've come across Danielle Laporte. So
Mm-mm.
again, she's not in the sports world, and most of the stuff that I do is things that I've been looking at that I'm like, actually, this is really applicable in the sports world. So she talks about you're not chasing the goal. So whatever your goal is, whether it's to win the race or the medal, or you're chasing the feeling that comes with that goal. So kind of turning it a bit on its head, and you start to look at, how do I want to feel? So you kind of turn inwards a bit and look at, how do you want to feel every single day, regardless of whether you reach that goal or not. I think a lot of us often think about, I'm going to feel this way when I reach that goal, and you forget about the journey to that. So it's like, how do you want to feel every day? And literally, even just starting your day by writing down, I want to feel this, this, and this, and then turning to music, often music that so familiar music that is going to help you feel that way that you want to feel. That can really help with your mindset. Rocky is such a cliche,
Yes.
but you want to feel like strong, or
The Eye of the
like you're a
Tiger.
winner. You might turn to Eye of the Tiger. Because you have associations with that. And if you've seen the film, you've got a visual representation, you can then start to feel that way. And that then will enhance your performance to a certain degree, because you're going into it with that mindset. And mindset's so important alongside physical training, but actually getting your mind in the right sort of frame of mind to then go into that task.
That's so interesting. And I think you're totally spot on. You're chasing that feeling, not necessarily having the ribbon or trophy. Sure, those are nice, but there's actually research that equates that high feeling of winning with releases of dopamine, or not dopamine, morphine, actually. So it's like, okay, it actually is an addiction.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then it's like, well, what if you get injured, or you can't race, or you can't train, or for whatever reason? Then just think how that's going to make you feel in terms of that negative impact. Whereas if you focus on, actually, these are my core desired feelings, this is what I want to feel, and then you're striving for that. And obviously you have goals, but we call them like goals with soul, that you've chosen how you want to feel first, and then you're putting your goals, and everything just becomes aligned.
That's really interesting and powerful too, because not even for the positive moments of how you want to feel when you win, but like you said, if you're injured or you lost the championship match or whatever situation you're going through that are the pitfalls as an athlete, I guess you can also use music too to process through that situation and then identify the way that you want to feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I put out a post on Instagram, I think a couple of days ago, about exactly about that, about, what happens if you lose a match, or you don't win the race, or you don't that training session doesn't go the way that you want. It's then actually, you can turn to music. You can use music in different ways, whether it matches the mood that you're in. Sometimes it's okay to sit with that. You're feeling crappy, and acknowledge that. You don't have to then always be in a high energy, and crap stuff happens, and then, but it's okay, I'm feeling great. That's just not natural, is it? You can use music to then kind of just sit with those feelings for a bit, but then you can also use the music to be like, okay, well, this is how I'm feeling. I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel this other way, and I want to pick myself back up again. So I'm now going to use music to then, change my emotions and transform them to the way that I want to feel.
I think that this is the most efficient way to manage your emotions. Like the way that you're describing it and how you can use the desire mapping to identify the way that you want to feel. And maybe it happens as immediate as this, but simply turning on that song or turning on that playlist or hearing those chords, to me, that's the most intuitive, fastest way to get there. Not that therapy doesn't work, not that, journaling doesn't work or other modalities don't work, but without any vocabulary or words, just the beat or the notes or the chords, it speaks to humans in a way that's so natural that gets us to those feelings fastest.
Yeah, that's the thing. And sometimes it can sound so simple. And I think at times we might be like, well, why haven't I done this? Because, so say, for example, yesterday, I've been really tired and kind of drained. I don't want to feel that way. Not many of us do. And so then I chose rock music, and I turned to like Blink 182, and I
Yes.
put on that music. I have memories that are associated with that, positive memories. I know that within kind of a minute of the first song, I can't help but feel good. And it will lift you out of that funk. And it's sometimes we take it for granted, but it is really powerful in that way.
Mm-hmm. And so also maybe it's my own perception, but I don't feel like people initially think of music as a modality to go to. Like kind of what I mentioned, there are other ways that people typically go for that self-care, self-help, journaling, whatever it happens to be, therapy, counseling, mentorship, going for a walk. There's like all of these other suggestions on how to work through your emotions. So how can people, and specifically athletes, grow their awareness that they can tap into music as a resource that's probably more effective and better in managing their emotions than some of these more traditional ways?
Yes, I mean, definitely can be used alongside, like none of them kind of need to stand out in their own right. I think they're definitely, we can kind of mix them up. Journaling is a great way to process emotions. And then maybe that's a kind of a starting point, or having these type of conversations to start delving into your emotions. Because it's one thing to say, turn to music and feel the way you want to feel. But actually, without taking that time to journal, to vision make, I don't know if many people do that in kind of the sports arena, but actually visioning, where do you see yourself going, feeling the feeling that you want to have. Until you do that, you can't then really use music in this respect, in terms of kind of feelings based. And that's sort of the mission that I'm on. So you were saying about, how do people even know to sort of
Mhm.
turn to this? There's not, although there's a lot of research out there, there's not that much guidance from what I can see. So that's something that I'm really keen to start changing, is to actually like doing things like this, coming onto podcasts, putting out messages on social media, so that people just start to become more aware in the sports world how you can tap into music and kind of, and start being in control a bit of your emotions through the music you listen to, rather than, if you're going to the gym or wherever, just happening to have music on in the background. It's actually like, no, you can be in charge of this. You can control your training, how you feel, whatever kind of desired performance outcomes you want. And obviously it's not a magic bullet,
Yeah.
it's not to replace like physical training or coaching, and but it is, you can use it in such a way that it can enhance your performance.
Yeah. And this is kind of funny, but I have 3 playlists on my Spotify account for feeling low, feeling in the middle, and then feeling very positive. So I call them in it, like in my feelings, and those are my power ballads. Then I have through it, where it's like, okay, I'm kind of singing the other side. And then I have thriving, where I have like the sunshine, happy songs.
Yeah,
So
that's incredible. I think that's a good way. And I think, in terms of like when you're training as well, thinking of it like that. So thinking of it kind of like a curve, you want to start off with music that's going to make you feel motivated. As like professional athletes, maybe you're already you're motivated to go out there. But for those of us that are more amateur, we need something maybe to even want us to do the exercise in the first place and to get out there.
Mhm.
But whatever your level is, you're going to want something to start off with, something that's going to start to increase your heart rate, to bring back those positive memories that you might already have, whatever it is, going out with your mates, going clubbing, or whatever it is that is going to make you start to feel that that high energy. And then it's going to start to go up. So as you're increasing your training and your endurance, you're going to match the music to fit with that, and there'll be a peak where it's high energy, it's positive music, it's those positive lyrics,
Mhm.
and then it's going to start to come back down. So when you're getting nearer to finishing that session, to cooling down, you don't want to necessarily finish at that high vibe, everything's just going up and up. You then want to bring it back down again, so you want to have a third playlist, which is more of a slower tempo, calmer, just helping you to ground yourself a bit. So that way of having three different types of podcasts works really well in a training session too.
That's super interesting. I wish I knew that when I was training 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's more and more research that's coming out, but it just feels like this happens a lot with academic research, is that then it doesn't get put into practice. It's like, actually, let's take that and put that knowledge out there.
Yeah. And I guess stepping back from a broader perspective of humans and music, like, why is it so natural to humans? Like, I even go back to like the caveman days, and I think of tribal drumming or using sticks and rocks to make beats and make music. And then I also think of, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, but the scene
Yes.
with Matthew McConaughey and Leonardo DiCaprio where he goes, mm, like, it's something so small, but it changes the whole situation. So I guess just from a broader perspective of humans and music, like, why is music so intrinsic to us and natural to us?
Is such an innate thing, and I think you might have hit on it earlier, is that you were saying, it's without communication, like we don't need to communicate with one another. You could go to another part of the world and not speak someone's language, but be able to communicate musically, and that's because it's such an innate part of us. Is our heartbeats. We have a heartbeat, we walk to a certain tempo, you feel music, it
Mhm.
can make you move. Obviously, yeah, going back to like caveman days, it was a way of communicating with one another, of war, the call to war would be through that, and that like power that comes with it, which then incidentally in music nowadays, there's a lot of research around like music with a heavy bass can give you a feeling of power. And it's because of that, it goes back to that innate, and you can feel it, you feel the vibrations, and that actually resonates with you physically. So there is, even if you're not musical, or you don't, a
Mhm.
lot of people say they're not musical because they don't play an instrument, but that doesn't mean that you're not musical. Music really, or you're, people say I'm tone deaf, I can't sing a note. That doesn't mean that you're not musical. You can still feel it in your body, and you can't control the way that your body and mind respond to music. And that's the power of it. And it goes back to the caveman days. It's built into us.
So, and I guess talk about a little bit of your experience with dementia care, because I think that's super fascinating too. Just what you said, you can't really control how you respond to music. So how do people and elders with dementia use music to, I guess, connect neural pathways, or what happens in that space?
Yeah, so the fascinating thing, and I can link this to sports in some respect too, and you can sort of see where my
Okay.
thinking is going, is that the great thing about music is that if you think of like your brain like a Christmas tree with sort of maybe the lights are flickering if you're living with dementia, when you listen to music, for any of us, when we listen to music, it lights up various parts of the brain at the same time. So it's like a full workout for your mind, and it lights up both areas of the brain at the same time. If you're living with dementia, often, if we go with the Christmas tree analogy, so maybe some of those lights are a bit dimmer than others, some of them are brighter, but when you're listening to music, it can still reach parts of that damaged brain that other forms of communication can't. And
Mm,
it's scientifically proven that that's what happens. So music, compared with other forms of communication, can still help to bring back memories, can, you know, help to bring back well, not even bring, to tap into emotions. You know, the emotions are still there. And that's kind of the power in dementia care, is how it can reach those parts of the brain. So, you know, there are different neural pathways that are maybe damaged, but music can still get through. And even at end of life, there's still recognition for music is preserved. And I think that's because it is so deeply ingrained in us, in terms of, well, all of us. You know, it's taken me so long to realize all of this research I'm looking at, this is applicable to all of us. But we have certain memories associated with music when we listen to music, maybe from like our teens and our early 20s. That's sort of like our like peak in terms of our musical memories. That brings back emotions. You know, the memories come back, you then feel that emotion. And that's then where sort of I'm looking at in terms of sort of sports world, is that, yeah, actually then, like I kind of coming back onto that feeling how you want to feel. Well, this is what I'm seeing in dementia care, is that obviously they're not always in kind of control of choosing the music or whatever, but if you know the music that's meaningful to the individual, and you know that that will help to bring back positive memories, you can have a stronger connection as a caregiver because you know that bit more about that individual. You can then help them to bring back those positive feelings and to feel that way. You know, that's completely real, the way that you're feeling.
yeah, I could not agree more. Um, and I guess just flipping to the other side of the coin, what about the power of silence? Is there a space for a lack of music and just sitting in silence?
Yeah, and that's the great thing about music, is it's so subjective. So I often talk about, I like to have like cafe jazz when I'm doing my work. I can't
Yes.
work with like songs in the background because I get distracted. And if it's whether it's a song I know or I don't know, I get distracted by the lyrics. But I can't, personally, I can't work in silence. I find it really hard. Whereas other people can't work at all with music in the background. They prefer silence. And although the research shows that, you know, listening to music is really good for sports performance and enhancing performance, I'm sure there will be lots of people that it just doesn't resonate with, and they would prefer to be in silence. Because that's the subjective nature of music, is that it's so dependent on you as an individual and where you're at.
Mhm. Interesting. And so if an athlete today who maybe has struggles with emoting, because as you've read in a lot of your resources, emotions are banned in the world of sports and they're not welcomed. And that's part of the stigma with mental health. But if an athlete wanted to learn more about using the power of music and maybe even potentially working with you, how can they read up about it or find resources to just grow their knowledge of what the power of music and you can do to help their sports performance or their, being as an athlete?
Yeah, so they can always reach out to me on Instagram. So that's at I am Rosie Mead. And I love having conversations. You know, if anyone's got any particular questions or want to run a playlist sort of past me or whatever, because I definitely don't want to be prescriptive with this, because it really depends on your own musical taste. But there's a brilliant book. I'm just gonna, I know that this isn't being no one's gonna see this, but I can show you the book and I'll explain
Okay.
it. So this is the book. And this is what really kind of sparked my knowledge in it. So the book's called Applying Music in Exercise and Sports, and it's by Professor Karageorgis, who's at Brunel University. And he's like the expert on music in sports and exercise. And his book is just really comprehensive about the psychology behind why music helps in sports and exercise. He talks about individual sports, about exercise classes, about team sports, and how music can help there as well. And that's the most kind of comprehensive book. I call it my Bible because I just go back to it time and time again. It's really inspirational. So definitely, if someone's kind of interested in this area or wants to know more about it, I'd say start with Professor Karageorgis and search him on YouTube. He's done various interviews. His research is the kind of the one to go to.
Okay. And you yourself, though, you're launching a coaching program for, is it just athletes? Is it musicians? Is it everyone? Tell us about your coaching.
Yeah, so I'm working this one out at the moment. Which is great. And this is why it's great to kind of have these conversations, because it just kind of gets it going. So I'm really coming from the research kind of perspective around, how music can help us to feel the way we want to feel, how we can create goals from that, how we can be the best version of ourselves. We have that potential in us, and how music can help you with that. So I've just qualified as a life coach. And I'm now looking at kind of high performance coaching. So really bringing in life coaching, my music side, the desire mapping, it all kind of comes under this like high performance umbrella. So I'm really honing in on working with athletes, because I feel that that's a particularly beneficial area, and there's so much research around it. This week I've had loads of conversation with triathletes. Obviously that's kind of my husband's background as well, and just realizing how important it can be in that arena, but sort of sports more widely. Obviously there's applications in terms of musicians, so it's another aspect I'm interested in, is musician well-being. I think there's so many crossovers between musicians and sports professionals in terms of being at your A game, being the best, but also focusing on your soul. So I've come up with a strap line for my business, and it's soulful high performance, because I want to go against the books that are like, don't show emotion. There was one book I read, and what did he say in it? Winning isn't the stuff of your dreams, it's the stuff of your nightmares. And I was like, oh no, this isn't. And he was talking about, think of it like a mountain, and when you get, it takes ages and ages of pain to get to that winning, that thing you want to win, and then the minute you win, you're right back to the bottom again. And he's like, never take your eye off the ball, like never celebrate winning.
Wow, intense.
Yeah, it was intense, but actually it was a really good book for me to read, because it's really honed my own thoughts in terms of realizing that's not the model that I want to follow. And there's so many crossovers with musicians in that space as well, that kind of tapping into your soul. You can tap into how you want to feel, you can tap into your emotions, and you can still achieve your best, and perhaps maybe be more likely to achieve your best and feel good while you're doing it.
Yes. And that's so true with athletes and musicians. Like in the research that I've been doing about athletes and the athlete identity, I've been trying to draw a parallel between athletes and any other group of people who are the most similar. And in my opinion, I think professional musicians are the most similar. They have a coach or a band leader. They are so attentive to detail on their craft, whether it's the violin or, the brushstroke or whatever it happens to be. They're in a group setting. They have a performance at the end of the season. There's so many parallels. And then I think of the movie Whiplash. I don't know if you've seen Whiplash.
No, I haven't.
Oh, you would love it. It came out in 2014, I think, but it's about this jazz drummer who is like, he's young in this college setting and he wants to join this really high level band, but it's all of these like first chairs and they're all super good at what they do. And this band leader is so like, just drives them so hard to be the best. And he's kind of a jackass a little bit. But without spoiling anything, it just goes through his journey of the intensity of becoming the best jazz drummer he can possibly be, and the relationship between him and his band leader. But I genuinely think if you swap that drummer out with a gymnast or a diver or a soccer player, the whole plot line is perfectly streamlined. It's perfectly parallel to sports and music. And I just think it's such a good movie. In my opinion, it has one of the best movie endings of all time. So definitely watch it. But yeah, I think athletes and musicians are very, very similar.
Yeah, there's so many crossovers, and there's a great book that I can't remember what it's called now, and it talks about how baseball players and musicians are really similar. And I think there was a famous baseball player who also then, when he retired, went on to be a really good musician, and I can't remember his name now, but that book is fascinating because it just condensed all of that, like we were talking about, all of the things that I was thinking in terms of the similarities, and there really are. And I think both fields are so competitive that you tend
Mhm.
to you focus so much on that goal, you lose track of yourself, and why are you even doing this? Like, what? And I think sometimes that's why I feel I'm maybe like really best positioned as a coach, because I'm not in the sports arena. I'm in the music field, but even then I never wanted to become a professional musician, because I stepped away from that competitive world and performance nerves, and just realized that wasn't going to tick the way that I wanted to feel. um but I think sometimes having that outsider who isn't in the sports arena to then kind of delve deeper into these questions about, yeah, like,
Mhm.
what is it about this particular goal? Why are you chasing this dream? It's not because of the thing necessarily, it's because of that way you want to feel. And that's
Right.
that's so applicable to sports and musicians too.
And I'm curious, what does your husband say about the work that you're doing? What is his take on, especially being a triathlete? What does he think?
Yes, it's really interesting. So he's being my guinea pig at the moment. So I'm doing coaching with him right now, and we're looking at this kind of, yeah, how to feel motivated to we're looking at kind of morning exercise. How do you feel motivated to get out and do exercise? Because when you're exercising, if you're used to training, during the training, that's not the issue. But sometimes, especially, so many triathletes, they're not necessarily paid to be triathletes. They've got work, they've got families. And I'm sure it's the same in many sports professions as well. Unless you're kind of the top of your game, you're juggling so many other balls as well. You're not able to kind of just focus on that one activity all the
Yeah.
time. So it's then looking at, well, how can you then sort of prioritize that? How can you feel motivated to do the exercise? Something we talk a lot about, because obviously in any running event, I think, and definitely in triathlon, you can't listen to music. So it's I say it's illegal. That's probably too strong a word, but it's illegal not to. You can't listen to music, and so that's something that we're trying to work through. Is actually, then if you can't listen to music during an event, how can you use music sort of in terms of your training, to
Yeah.
then be at that point where it's okay to go out and do an event without music on? So you don't want to use it in such a way that you become so reliant on it. And so I'm going off on like a different subject, but it comes under that kind of, they're the discussions that we've been having, is
So
looking at actually,
interesting.
training sometimes, especially high impact, high intensity training, doing that kind of training sometimes without music, because then if you know that you can kind of get through that, and you can beat your PB, or whatever it is, your outcome, then when you do train with music, it really should make that easier. But also, then when you're doing lower intensity or high intensity events, that you can do it without music. And so I think it's really beneficial in training, but you don't want to become reliant on it, so that like, if you didn't have that music, you wouldn't be able to perform at your best. And you said earlier about being in silence. Sometimes earworms can be a great thing. There's a really, really bad thing, and there's nothing you can do about them. There's no scientific evidence about how you can control earworms. But if you know that there's a particular piece that you really resonate with, or it makes you feel the way you want to feel, try to get that in your head. So that then when you're doing that event, swimming would be a great example of it. You can't have music on while you're swimming, but you could get a particular song in your head. And if that makes you feel the way you want to feel, then try and get that to stick, and try and focus on that. The same, linking it in with like visualizations, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
then have that song going in your head, and it can help you be in the zone even when you're in silence.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. And do you have a favorite song by chance? Is there
Oh, I
one
do actually.
song? Yeah.
Yeah. So so this is weird. So this is my favorite song, but it's not one I'd work out to. So Just Like Heaven by The Cure. So The Cure are my favorite band.
Okay.
And even my kids know that if mummy's in a little bit of a grumpy mood, if we're in the car, they'll turn on The Cure, and because they know that that's the thing that makes me feel good.
That's
And it
awesome.
hasn't worn off yet. There's something about that song that just, I turn it up and I feel good. But in terms of kind of working out, I wouldn't have a particularly favorite song, but I'd often use like club music, or I find music with like strong lyrics. So things like Proud by Heather Small. I like things like that, that they're not a fast tempo. The other one is Something Inside So Strong. Things like that that kind of just make you feel uplifted. So they're the things that I turn to when I'm working out. And and I don't think I said it at the beginning, I'm not a professional. I do a little bit of strength training, and sometimes I go out on my bike.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, The Cure are my favorite band. That's what makes me feel good, which is
Yeah.
weird because I think they were classed as the most depressing band. But I don't feel that way when I listen to them.
So The Cure is your cure.
Yeah, it is.
Awesome. Well, this has been super insightful, helpful. Thank you so much for joining us. Athletes, if you're listening, the power of music, as you can already hear from Rosie, it's so powerful. Sometimes there's no vocabulary even to ascribe to it. So it's, in my opinion, I think the power of music is more of an untapped, undiscovered part of performance and just emotions in general. So if you're listening to this episode, please check out the links. Again, I will include everything about Rosie and her coaching business, her website, and her social media in the show notes, so you can contact her and stay up to date on the research that she's doing. So
thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's just so interesting to me. So thank you so much.
Brilliant.